Hello and welcome back to C# for Beginners video series. I hope you are enjoying the videos and getting some benefit from it. If you are, please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so that you are notified when a new video is released. In this video, we will do a coding exercise. So the coding exercise is to get a string input from the console and then print a reverse version of that string. So for example, if the user input is hello, we need to reverse it in the program and print it from the other side, like OLLEH. Let's get started. As with all complex problems, let's break down the problem to smaller problems and solve one problem at a time. The first problem we have is that we have to get a string input from the console. So let's learn how to do that. So far, we have been printing to the console using Console.Write line. Console.Write line prints the message inside the brackets to the console. So if I click on run, it will print hello world into the console. Console.read line to read a user input from the console. The console.read line reads the user input as a string. Let's do an example. We will print out a message, enter a string into the console using the console.write line. We will then read the input of the user or whatever the user types in into the console and save it into the variable called str input. And then we are going to print out that input back to the console. Let's click on run. So as you can see, the console is now waiting for an input. I can put in hello world and hit enter, and the program prints back whatever I typed in. The first problem is done. We now know how to get an input from the console. The next problem is we need to reverse that string we got from the console. Before reversing the string, let's try and see if we can break the string into its own parts. We can use the strings properties that C# provides to get access to each character in a string. A string is a collection of characters. We can retrieve a character by specifying the index of that character. You can specify the index in between square brackets to retrieve the character at that index of a string. One thing to note is that index always starts at 0. Let's say the user entered this word into the input, hello. So the index of H is going to be 0. Index always starts at 0. The index of E is going to be 1, L going to be 2, the other L going to be 3, and O is going to be 4. The word hello has 5 characters in them, but the index starts at 0, hence the index of the last character is going to be 4. Because the index starts at 0, the index of the last character is always going to be the number of letters minus 1. So hello has 5 letters. The index of O, the last character, is 5 minus 1, which is 4. So let's try an example. We have a variable str and we're assigning the string hello to that variable. Let's try to print out the character at index 0. Now let's click on run and H is printed. We can print out the character at index 1, 2, 3, and 4 individually and see what it prints. So we can print out HELLO. What would happen if we try to access the index 5 of the variable str? Remember, there are 5 characters, but the last index is 4. Let's try to access the index at 5. We need to put in the variable name str and the index 5 in square brackets. Let's see what happens when we click on run. We're going to get an error, and the error states that index was outside the bounds of the array. So this means that the index 5 is outside of the indexes that are available. Let's clear up this index and rerun. And now we can print each character of the string in separate lines. The input is not going to be hello every time. It can be a different word of different length. The user could enter multiple words, and our program needs to handle that. We need to figure out how long the user input is, or how many characters there are in them. The length property of string returns how many characters there are in the string. For example, hello dot length will return 5 because the string hello has 5 characters in them. So we can easily print out the length of the input by using the length property. So far, I've been using the word property of string. We will get into it in more details when we go into objects. But for now, just remember that if you need to access a property of a object such as a string, you can use the dot notation. So if I want to print out the length of the str property, I can do this. Notice after I type str and when I put dot next to it, it gives me access, the IntelliSense gives me access to all the properties that are available to me. And I want the length property. So if I click on length, it will put the length property there. And now when I click run, it will print 5. So the length of the variable str is 5. Let me clean up this screen a little bit. And let me use string interpolation to say the length of the input is, and then I want to use curly braces to interpolate this information into the string. And when I click on run, it prints out the length of the input is 5. Let's store the length of the string into a variable. Variable length is equal to str.length, and length is in capital letters. And we can change this prompt to, instead of doing str.length, we'll just print out the value of the variable length here. Just fix it up a little bit. And then click on run, and we should get back the exact same response. So the length is 5. So now the variable length is now storing the length of the string. Take a look at these lines. They're identical except for this numbers, the index of the character 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can convert all these lines into a single line by using a loop. So here's the for loop. In the for loop, I have the for keyword, and my index will start at 0 as we are doing here, and the index is going to increase by 1 with the increment operator, and it will increase up until the index I is less than or equal to length. Now, I am intentionally putting less than or equal to length for a reason, but let's carry on. And then I'm changing this line, these lines, these 4 lines into a single line, Console.Write line, str, and in the place of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I am putting in the index I. So now if I delete these lines and run it, we will get an error. And we have gone over this error before, and we will analyze why we got that error. And as you can see, we are getting index outside of the bounds of an array. Let's analyze what's happening in this for loop. Our length is 5, we know. And initially, on the first run, I is equal to 0. So I is equal to 0. So this condition will be true because I is 0 and length is 5. So I is less than or equal to 5, which is true. This code gets run with the I equal to 0. So str, the 0 index of str is h. H gets printed out. Okay. And so the next time when the loop comes in, at this time I is equal to 1, and the condition is still true because I is less than or equal to 5. So str1 gets printed, which is E. The letter at index 2 is printed, L, and the loop goes through, and now the I is equal to 3. It prints out another L, and the next iteration I is equal to 4. It prints out the letter O. Okay, and then this one gets incremented to 5. So when I is equal to 5, this condition is still valid, is still true, because 5 is less than or equal to 5. But 5 index doesn't exist. There are only 4 index places from 0 to 4. This is what I wanted to mention. When we're dealing with indexes, our index starts at 0. The length is 5, but there is only 4 indexes available. So to fix this, we will just need to change this less than or equal to less than. So now when I is equal to 5, this loop, this condition will be false, and the loop will not go through, and this will not get printed with an I equal to 5. So let's run it, and we get all the characters printed from 0 to 4, HELLO. So all those 4 lines is now reduced to 1 line. And we can also handle multiple inputs. I can change hello to world and hit run. It will print out hello world. I can put in as many characters as I want, and it will still print out all the characters that are in the input. Okay, so let's change it back to hello and run the file again. So using the for loop, we can print the input hello in order like this. If you notice the for loop, we're starting at 0 and going up to the length of the string minus 1. So the index is going from 0 to 4, and it's printing out from H to O. But we need to reverse it. We need to print from O to H. So all we need to do is just flip the for loop. Instead of starting at 0, we will start at length minus 1, because the last index of the input is index minus 1, and we will run the loop as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, and we will decrement I by 1 in each iteration. So we will start at length minus 4, which is going to be 4, which is the letter O, and then we're going to loop the index I from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to 0. So as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, and we will decrement I by 1. So let's run the code, and we can see that the string hello is printed in the opposite direction. So we're almost there. We just need to write these letters in one single line. To do that, all we need to do is change Console.Write line to Console.Write. And if we run the code, and here we go. It's printing the word hello in reverse order. Console.Write line inserts a line break at the end of the line, and Console.Write does not. That is the difference between Console.Write line and Console.Write. So here is the whole solution. The first line, we print a message onto the console saying enter a string to reverse. Then we read the user input and store it in the variable input. Then we get the length of the input using the length property of the string, which will give us how many characters there are in the input, and we store that information in the length variable. Then using a for loop, we start at the last index of the input, and the last index of the input is the length of the input minus 1. On each iteration of the loop, the index will start at the end, decrease by 1 on each iteration, and we want the iteration to stop when I has reached 0. So the condition we're saying is as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, we should run the loop. And inside the loop, we're just printing out the character at the index I of the input variable. So let's run the code, and we have a prompt, enter a string in reverse, Episode-6 exercise 1, and hit enter, and the output is in reverse order. I hope with this exercise you've learned a bit more on the for loop and how to read input from a user, and how to get the length of a string, and how to design a for loop to do a reverse. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you can notified when the next video is released. Till then, goodbye.